Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm your host, Steven, and in today's edition of Under the Radar Review, where we look at albums that have perhaps underperformed, slipped through the cracks, didn't resonate with the fans as they should have, and we go back saying that they deserve a second chance. This time out, I've decided to pick the 1987 album Into the Fire from the one and only Bryan Adams. Most fans know Bryan Adams from songs like Cuts Like a Knife, Run to You, When You're Gone, and of course Summer of '69, and then there's the mega ballad from the Robin Hood soundtrack, Everything I Do It For You. Bryan Adams is a staple in Canada. He is an icon. He's beloved by millions of people, not only in Canada but around the world, and rightfully so. He's written some great songs. But there have been some times where albums didn't resonate, and Into the Fire was one of them at the time. I think over the years it has developed a fan base, and people are learning to appreciate this album. But at its time of release, I remember being frustrated that it wasn't held in high regard, and I was a little disappointed in that. I thought it was a great album on its own. The album was co-produced by his songwriting partner Jim Vallance and legendary Bob Clearmountain, who actually worked with Bruce Springsteen as well. The album reached number 7 on Billboard charts and number 2 in Canada. And it sold approximately about 3 million units worldwide, and I think it sold 300,000 units in Canada, which is basically the same amount as his album Cuts Like a Knife. So in terms of sales, it kind of matched his album before Reckless, but didn't match the global success that Reckless had done. And I think that's what people kind of saw it as a failure in terms of sales at that time. But the album is a little bit more deeper in lyrical content, and I know at the time they were trying to push it as the next. He's going like Bryan Adams is becoming the next Bruce Springsteen. This is like his Nebraska or Darkness at the Edge of Town. It's not that way. Bryan Adams and Jim Vallance never lost their ability to make a catchy chorus or a great hook or have an earworm, so the song plays in your head long after you've stopped playing this album. Yes, that mattered. Some of the songs, it's not your typical boy meets girl or girl meets boy and they fall in love and there's a breakup and they get back to you. There's none of that here. This is basically a little bit more serious in tone, and it's darker, but nonetheless it's still an enjoyable album. I really like the album opener. It's a little darker than usual, and slower. I wouldn't say it's a rocker, but it's a mid-tempo rocker. Heat of the Night, Hearts on Fire is one of my favorite songs from Bryan Adams of all time. I think it's fantastic. Victim of Love is the love song, but it's not really a love song. Only the Strong Star is a good little rocker, and Another Day. Of course, there was also Rebel, which was covered by Roger Daltrey of The Who on one of his solo albums. I like Bryan Adams' version here too. It's a great album. There's also songs arranged, like there's everything. There's Victim of Love, which is, when it doesn't work out. Heat of the Night, about things going wrong. Into the Fire. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I think that's an underrated track. Then there's a song about First Nation American and Canadians called Native Son, and then there's a song about war veterans called Remembrance Day. Into the Fire, the title track, is a great track. It's a phenomenal and it's a well-written track, and I wrote a few of the lyrics down to show you it's not your typical Bryan Adams, but once you hear the version, he has a live version. It's fantastic. So it goes something like this: life thin as a thread. Sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're better off dead. Your first breath is taken, and into the world you are cast. You long for tomorrow while living each day as your last. It continues on going, there's a moment in every man's life when he must decide what is wrong and what is right. You could wait for your dreams to come true, but time has no mercy. Time won't stand still for you. Pretty deep for Bryan Adams, but it's catchy when you hear it. Like you'll go into the fire. He hasn't lost the knack on this album, but I think when they pushed it, they kind of made it sound like he's the next Bruce Springsteen or John Mellencamp or Bob Seger, and he wasn't. He's just Bryan Adams singing a different way. What made this enjoyable? It wasn't Reckless Part 2. This is its own entity. It's on its own, and it doesn't sound like any of his other albums. If you go back, it does not sound like anything else he has done. I think the only thing that he kind of touches on there is on the album On a Day Like Today, which I will get to one day in this Under the Radar review, since that deserves to be there too. But all in all, this is a great album. 6 singles, I believe, were released: Heat of the Night, Victim of Love, Hearts on Fire, Another Day. I'm pretty sure there was about 6 singles off this album. Like I said, it didn't live up to the sales expectations, so it was deemed a commercial failure at the time. But I think over the years, people who kind of rediscover Bryan Adams go back to the back catalog and say, what is this Into the Fire album? I've heard of Waking Up the Neighbors, 18 Till I Die, the Unplugged album. What is this? And they kind of get I think there's a more of an appreciation for it now. But at the time, like I said, it was deemed a commercial failure, and he did take a long break before he came back with Waking Up the Neighbors, which is another divisive album. Some fans thought he really sold out and really went super commercial, and other people thought it was the greatest album he's ever done. So it depends on your take on it, but he did take a long extended break after that because he had to step back and see where he was going, But all in all, it's a great album. Again, it's not as catchy as Cuts Like a Knife or Reckless, but that's the beauty of it. It's its own entity, and that's what makes it special. There is no album in his catalog that sounds like this, and I don't think there ever will be again. And that's what makes it very special, and it deserves your attention. It deserves a listen. I hope you do go back to it. So if you do like Bryan Adams, or you used to like Bryan Adams, and you thought he kind of only writes kind of fluff pieces, give this one a listen. This might change your perspective on this guy. He's not as fluffy or light as you think he is. He can tackle it, but yet he will always keep that catchy chorus there. So you'll remember the song. And like to this day, I still know Into the Fire, you can't take it with you. You can't stop. And I know from this 30 years onward, I still know this. So he did his job. And as a songwriter, is to make the song memorable. And he did it. I just think it wasn't what we were expecting at the time. And like I said, it wasn't Reckless Part 2, or Part 2, as we say. Nonetheless, as I've always said, a good album is a good album is a good album. So do yourself a favor, go back, listen to this little lost gem from Bryan Adams. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But you let me know what you think. Please send your comments. I'd love to hear from you. And please hit the like button and subscribe. It would mean the world to us. So this is Steven from the Aroundtable with our latest entry into Under the Radar Reviews, the 1987 underrated little gem from Bryan Adams called Into the Fire. This is Steven from the Aroundtable, wishing you all the best.